Hey guys, a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a little bit more like 2 months ago, I had a video where I was talking about some of the ways that people approach living in Nicaragua, and I was reading a letter from Kevin, and he responded to me privately that he felt that I had been overly harsh in the way that I presented his argument there, and that maybe I need to soften my tone when looking at some of these things, and that understand that people have coming from a place with a good heart, and maybe I'm simply being too harsh with the way I approach some things. So I want to start off by apologizing to Kevin. I did not mean to come across that way. I am autistic, and it's not an excuse, but I do sometimes come across very harshly in how I present things. So I understand that I do that. I should work on that, absolutely, and I will attempt to do so. In that discussion with Kevin, however, he did say there were some things that he felt were important for me to touch on, or would be useful for me to touch on, because we were talking about cost of living. We were talking about how different price points and different things are interacted with by the public, and that some people, under some circumstances, are finding that living in Nicaragua can be relatively expensive, certainly not more expensive than other places, but more expensive than they may anticipate. And he specifically had some examples of things that he found to be maybe important to bring up, or at least indicative of where this problem may lie. Some things are really obviously cheaper, generally food, and but even there, some people find that some food that they want is kind of expensive, mostly because they're getting it imported and they're failing to understand that they're doing some specialty thing. But generally, most people understand that food and housing and the basics of life are much cheaper here. But then people will point out that electric and gas, fuel gas that is, tend to be on the expensive side. Not outrageous, but they're leaning towards expensive. So it's not universally cheaper. That's certainly true. But Kevin brought up an important example that a lot of people have mentioned over the years, and I'm very aware can be a bit of a problem, and that is televisions. And it's not isolated to televisions. It's a lot of things in certain categories, and we could mention cameras as another that I personally interact with quite a bit, and these things tend to be a lot more expensive here in Nicaragua than elsewhere. And so Kevin wanted me to talk about how this kind of just relates to the experience that people have in cost of living here. And so this is important. So let's talk about televisions, because when we talk about how things are cheaper here, we generally mean most everything is. And then people go to the store and go to buy a television or a camera or a computer, and they often find that the costs are much higher. So if you were to walk into the local computer store and try to buy a laptop, for example, you can expect to spend between 50 and 100% higher than you would for the same thing in the US. Not everyone notices this price difference, because what is actually happening is that they're selling an older or lower quality machine at higher price than a new one in the US. So most people only perceive the cost difference, but in reality, they're comparing against something better in the US, in many circumstances, not all. And still at a higher price point in Nicaragua. So it's a combination of two things, but the one tends to make us miss the other. But you may be getting a 3-year-old model or a lower end processor or less memory, and still paying more than a higher end model in the US. So the combination is actually that the amount you're paying extra, if you wanted to get apples to apples comparison, is quite a bit more in many circumstances. And televisions are going to be a similar item that make a great example at this. If you were to walk into a Walmart, for example, and go shopping in the United States, you may pick up a perfectly adequate, nice television for $200 to $300, and you could get entry-level ones even cheaper. Here, it's going to be really hard to find any television under $500, and most that you want will be closer to $800. Well, that's a lot more money for what's essentially an apples to apples. We can't exactly compare perfectly, but relatively close compared to the US. These are big budget items that are quite a bit more expensive. So a couple important points there. One is that this is completely true. If you walk into stores here, that is generally what you're going to find in price. It's not 100% of the time, but it is most of the time. Most people who are shopping for those things here find that they cost a lot more. But what does this all mean? So one, a lot of people then perceive this as life being much more expensive here than it really is. So the first thing is that these things are not things you tend to buy nearly as much when you're here. It is true that they're more expensive, so that's important, but they're a small piece of your general life spending for most people. Most people are relatively not impacted by the cost of a television in most cases. This is something that in the US is part of what they call junk purchase culture, where people are buying low-cost things that wear out all the time with a high frequency. And because when you live in the US and in Canada, you tend to do these things a lot lot, they tend to be perceived as important parts of your spending. Outside of the US and Canada, that is not normal culture, and these things represent very small percentages of your overall purchasing behavior. You're much more likely to be spending money on food, drink, activities, housing, cars, travel, and so forth. Not everyone, so some people are affected by this a lot more than others. Also, when you move to a place like Nicaragua, there's a tendency to use things like televisions and computers a lot less. Again, not for everyone. Some people might use them more. So it depends on what your behavior is going to be, how it's going to affect you. So for a lot of us, even though a television is more expensive, we may buy half as many of them, or smaller ones, or just not as often, right? And so the total that we spend tends to be about the same. Likewise, the same kind of thing goes for a lot of these kinds of products. We just don't buy them as much here. And also for things like electricity and fuel gas for your car, we tend to drive smaller distances at lower speed. We tend to use less electricity here. So even though they're more expensive when measured on a per kilowatt or per gallon basis, the actual amount that you tend to spend on them tends to be less, and it's important to look at it both ways to understand that if you were to do exactly the same thing, it may cost more. But part of the reason that you move to a new country, not all of it and not for everyone, but one of the reasons that you would move to a new country is to have different behaviors. You don't want to just move to the beach and live the exact same life you lived not on the beach normally. Normally you want to add things like sitting out and watching the sunset, whereas if you lived in downtown Dallas, we didn't really do that. So we're hoping in most cases to have new leases on life and new life behaviors. And so we will be not using televisions, not using cars in quite the same way as before. But again, everybody's different. For all we know, you moved to Nicaragua because you wanted to have just a lower overhead lifestyle so you could watch more movies. That's perfectly okay. Not the norm. There's nothing wrong with it. And so you may be a person who would be adversely affected by this disproportionately because you care more about buying big TVs and lots of them. You want to be able to watch movies in every room of your house all day long. You want all your friends to come over and you're having movie marathons and you're comparing movies and you're doing shows about movies and all kinds of stuff. That's your thing. Then you may be spending a lot more on TVs and speakers and stereos and surround sound systems and all those kinds of things than the rest of us would normally perceive. There's always going to be those edge cases where people are finding that the things that are more expensive here are major parts of their purchasing rather than minor parts of their purchasing. So generally when we're saying that things are cheaper here in Nicaragua, we're talking about your entire life package. The cost of living is lower, and it certainly is without a doubt, but there are certain behaviors and there's definitely certain items where you're going to have things be more expensive. But there's some important things I also want to add. Generally, when you're, let's say, in the United States and you wanted to say televisions are a certain price, normally what you do is you do some research and you go to the lowest cost place, Walmart in many cases, and you say, wow, look at all these TVs I can get at Walmart for low cost. But there's lots of people buying expensive TVs other places too. Not as many by any stretch, but there are people doing that, getting those nice Samsungs and Sony TVs, those giant ones with all the special features, those and industry leading edge features that are driving up the quality of the TVs. There's people out there doing that, even though there's lots of us who would just go to Walmart and get the lowest price. So both things exist. And we expect when people are talking about what the price of TVs are in the United States, that the people who are doing the research, which isn't much, going to Walmart and saying, look, $200, maybe I can get it cheaper, but how much cheaper really? And that's correct. So when you're here in Nicaragua, we don't always follow the same behavior because we've already, in most cases, as Expat, done that research in the United States, and we think we have those answers already. So we come to Nicaragua and we go looking for TVs. And where do we go looking? Well, in a lot of cases, we're going to Gallo Mas Gallo, we're going to Tropigas, we're going to Maxi Pali, which is Walmart. We're also going to Walmart. We're also going to PriceSmart. PriceSmart has some pretty good prices, so it's worth checking out. But we're going to these places just like we would in the US, basically mimicking our US behavior, Walmart, Costco, and similar. And we're getting results that are quite different, right? The prices that we get here typically are going to be pretty close to double, maybe not always, and sometimes even more. So be aware that if you do that, you may be finding really high prices. And if you talk to people who have done this, they may report that TVs are quite expensive here, and that's accurate within that scope. However, just like in the US, if we were to do our research and say, well, are people able to get lower cost TVs? The answer would actually be yes. Can we match the low cost of the US? Maybe, maybe not. But can we get a lot lower than people are reporting? Yes, we can. So if you were to be in the US and only go to Best Buy to look at TVs, you would feel that they are quite a bit more expensive than if you were to go to Walmart. At least back when I was in the US, that was true. Maybe Best Buy has lower prices now. Maybe Best Buy's out of business. I don't know. And So the same thing here. If you simply go to Gallo Mas Gallo and look at their TVs, they have a small selection at relatively high prices because it's a premium store and they only have this really small selection. So how do people who live in Nicaragua get good prices on TVs? Well, this is going to vary a little bit, but up until a few weeks ago, the thing that they would generally do is go on Amazon or Walmart or similar, or have someone they know in the United States go to a store, get the item that they want at the same price as the US, and ship it to Nicaragua for next to nothing. Remember, a TV is an expensive item on a per pound basis to purchase, but it's not very heavy. So a big TV, and I'm just guessing, will probably weigh less than 10 pounds. Maybe it's a little bit more, but it's not a lot. And shipping is between $2 and $3 per pound. So yes, if you have a 10-pound TV or even a 20-pound TV, you may be looking at, say, $50 of shipping. But if you're talking about trying to save the purchase price of paying $300 instead of $800, that $50 of shipping is a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of things. And if you're getting them from Amazon, in many cases you get a sales tax credit for, or you don't have to pay sales tax because there's no in-country sale, and so you actually get a tax benefit that may be very similar to, in some cases even better than, the amount you need to pay for shipping. So while we may not be able to walk into the store and get a TV same day as conveniently as we can in much of the US, we are in many cases able to get exactly US prices shipped to us very, very simply, and that's a big deal. Now, in the recent weeks and even in the recent days, what we have seen is a lot of new tariffs in the United States, and that is expected to raise the cost of goods such as TVs. Normally these things are not made in the United States. None of the supply chain for it exists in the United States. The cost of developing that supply chain and starting to make those things in the US would be extraordinarily high, and there isn't the skills and all the processes to do so. So we expect those things to remain coming from overseas, predominantly Japan, Korea, and China, maybe Vietnam. Those countries are going to keep making those things, and those countries have very high tariffs on them. So the markup on those televisions is quite high when passing through the US. It's been quite high in the past. This is not new. It's just higher now. And so because it's higher, either we're going to see those prices increase in the US, and it's going to be passed on to Nicaragua naturally, but we're not going to see a additional cost, right? We're simply going to see the US get closer to Nicaraguan prices. Or what is more likely is that more and more people in Nicaragua are going to start figuring out how to order their products directly from Asia and have them shipped over on the shipments coming from Shanghai. Once that happens, we anticipate, now this is anticipate, that we are going to start getting those same televisions or very similar ones that Walmart is getting at prices below what Walmart is able to get them for. If Walmart themselves are paying $180 so that they can sell you a TV for $200, they're still getting a markup from the tariff on that of about 30%. So they are unlikely to be able to get to the lowest price. Even at a low volume, you may be able to buy a similar television for $160 coming from China and only have a few dollars of shipping. Of course, it'll take a little while. We haven't figured all these details out yet. A lot of this is very new, but vendors like Shein and Temu and Alibaba and AliExpress really want to ship directly, and they have the ability to do so. So once we have these things figured out, and for me, things like 7 Artisans and TT Artisans, I'm expecting to be getting the products that we perceive as being most expensive here in the country actually below the price that you're able to get them in the US soon. That's a new thing that we expect to be changing. Right now, we're able to get them at the same prices as in the US without any real effort. There's few percentages up or down. Sometimes we get the same things cheaper, sometimes we pay more, but unless it's perishable, in which case all bets are off, or if it's super heavy, then yes, it's a little bit different. But as long as it's normal items, we are normally able to get things like TVs, and one of my viewers, TJ, ordered a big screen TV, or a few of them, big monitors, things that are very hard to find here and very expensive in country. He was able to buy them and have them shipped in no problem whatsoever. So that is a pattern that people who are researching and spending enough money are willing to do. For a lot of people, the amount of extra money that they're spending on a TV just isn't a big enough deal, and they're a little bit impatient. So they just go into the store and they get what's there, and they feel like buying locally has some advantage, and maybe it does, right? Maybe we're helping out a local store. Maybe we're getting some kind of warranty return that probably isn't real. In some of those cases, like you're going to Gallo Mas Gallo, you're actually getting a warranty, and that does have some benefits. But in many cases, you're going to get your best value simply by shipping from the US, or even better, shipping from Asia directly these days, because we have no tariffs with most of Asia. So we're able to get really good deals, and because we have direct shipments, we're able to get very low cost shipping. So there's a lot of potential there. But these are areas where people are always talking about how expensive things here are here in Nicaragua, outside of perishable items. And these are almost always things that, if you're really looking into it and approaching it the way that we have traditionally in the United States, you will get better prices. When I was young, we used to always have to go into Kmart, into Ames, that regionalizes me, to buy things like this, into Sears, JCPenney's maybe, and Montgomery Ward. But as I grew up, things like Borders and Barnes & Nobles and eventually Amazon came around, and those things changed how we purchased. We did research, we checked the prices over time, and things shifted. And now Amazon and Walmart are the places that we buy most of that low-cost stuff from as Americans, and we're used to that. But that is not a default. That is a doing research, changing our behaviors. And of course, over time, everybody learned that these are the paths to simply getting good value without doing a lot of research. And so they became the dominant path for doing that. Well, the same thing needs to happen here in Nicaragua. We need to get a momentum going so that the general public all knows exactly how and where to get good deals on things and are able to share that information in the way that the U.S. has. Basically, 30 years ago, everyone in the U.S. said, hey, wait a minute, if you order from Amazon or go to Walmart, you're going to get a TV for cheap. You're going to get cheap DVDs, all kinds of things. And people shared that knowledge. More people went there. The prices came down. We got really good deals. And you can leverage that as a Nicaraguan. Once we start doing that, and I plan on trying to do a bit of that through the channel, figuring out exactly how to get better deals. Yes, I'm telling you right now, you can go and get Amazon. I've been telling you this. I have an episode specifically on Amazon. I use Envio's Fast Track. There's other options, Optima and NicaBox and other things, but I'm very happy with Envio's Fast Track. They get me stuff very easily. Just the whole process is super easy, super cheap, and I'm able to get those products from the U.S. without major expense, and so I'm able to match those prices. And I'm even working with like used camera dealers. I'm working with esoteric, lens makers and craftsmen and all kinds of things, not just Amazons and Walmarts. And I'm having no problem getting good deals and matching anything I can do shopping in the U.S. It was just a year ago, I was still flying into the U.S., doing my shopping in person, having everything waiting, shoving it into suitcases and flying back. I wasn't doing it just for that, but I was leveraging those trips. And I still do to some degree. But now we know this is so easy and so straightforward that we're really just shipping everything. Why wait for a trip? And even if I'm going to be up there, why bother carrying it in my luggage when I can just send it easily in a box? So the prices today in Nicaragua match those in the US. But I'm hoping, my goal is to figure out a bunch of the supply chain to Asia and figuring out how I can get cameras and lenses and computers and clothing sent directly over, big things that we purchase on a semi-regular basis, and lower our costs even further and share that with you guys so that we can get a community of people who are lowering the cost even more. So that is a goal, and I think that we're going to get there really quickly. I think Nicaragua has an opportunity, because of where it sits in the ecosystem, to have really, really low cost even on new items, making the cost of living even lower than it's been. And we're going to talk now about cars, because this falls into this category as well. Just a couple years ago, we all talked about how expensive cars were here. Not that they were impossibly expensive, not that they were that much more than the US, but they were more. And people would talk about, like, maybe I'm going to buy a car in the US and ship it down. There's some tax credits, there's some ways to do it. Shipping's not that much. I'm going to save all this money by buying a car directly in the US and just bringing it down. Well, those things have changed dramatically, whether it's because of tariffs or whether it's because of automotive behaviors or market forces or shipping channel changes. Doesn't matter. The factors have changed. And I just bought a car recently, which is in San Juan del Sur for the week, so I have no way to bring you an episode about it yet. I'm really bummed about that. I'm looking forward to sharing that experience with you. But one thing I want to share is that car here in Nicaragua is $27,000. That same is a luxury SUV. That same SUV sells in the United States for $54,000. That is a 100% markup on that car. That's a big deal. If I was to buy that car in the United States and ship it here, it would cost me really close to $60,000. That's crazy, considering I can buy it new, off the lot, with a warranty, local service, and I recently had an accident. They're replacing everything. We have no problem getting parts. Nothing like that. Is so easy to deal with, and we have local insurance. Just everything works out, and that was just $27,000. Now, yes, we had an episode where we talked about the difficulties in financing. Yeah, not going to be able to finance here. That's something that the U.S. definitely has in spades over Nicaragua as far as benefits to the people. But when it comes to actually getting the car, we don't need to finance it because it's half the price. Half. That's hard for people to understand. That it's not just an expression. It's exactly half the price here. So that's a huge savings. And because our income for expats is coming from the US, now this doesn't apply to absolutely everybody, but if you have a salary here coming from the US, not only are our cars half the price, but we don't pay the taxes on our salary. So the salary necessary to pay for a $27,000 car is a lot lower than the salary necessary to pay for a $54,000 car with income tax on top of it. You need to earn, in one case, $27,000 to pay for that car. In the other, you need to earn really close to $90,000 to pay for that car. That's a wild difference. And so those kinds of things really do add up, and it's important to understand that those factors really do exist. So the car thing is really amazing, and a new thing that has happened here, that the prices here have plummeted while the prices in the United States have skyrocketed. So the disparity is huge, where it was not that long ago, it was flipped. Now, it was never dramatic. It was never double here. It's just a few percentage more. But in a poor country, you felt those percentages a lot, and it was very difficult for people to buy cars. But now the economy here is booming. The cost of many goods is dropping precipitously. And in comparison, the United States is getting much more expensive. So it's really amazing to watch this separation of the two places as life here. Cost of living is actually going down while the economy is growing, while there's more middle class. Life is getting so much better so quickly, it's really noticeable. And I hear for people in the United States, and maybe this is not true, that things are getting noticeably more expensive and more difficult on the ground. People are feeling that. It's not just something you see, in the stock market reports or whatever, and you read it and go, oh no, the stock market, but does it affect you day to day? What I'm hearing from people in the US is that it is noticeable day to day. It is affecting their everyday lives, that they're buying less, they're going out less, they're just fewer items in their houses, needing to be more frugal, needing to work a little bit harder or whatever. Those things are noticeable. So yes, for Kevin, he's right. There are things, and people need to be aware that there can be things that cost more here, but what it means to cost more here is something that you have to very carefully define, because the manner in which we buy things is changing. Now, if you're in the United States, you could say, well, can you do the same thing? I'm going to order directly from China and get things much cheaper. No, you can't. There's a 100% tariff on Chinese cars coming in, which is a normal thing. There is a large 54% effective tariff on just normal stuff coming in from China. So those little things that we can buy here for, say, $100 will be $154 in the US. That's a noticeable difference. Sure, you're earning more. That obviously helps. But the cost of things cannot be fixed by shipping directly in the way that Nicaragua is able to do. So we have this power, and we have to consider that when thinking about how we do our shopping, or when we're doing cost of living comparisons, because what people are willing to spend, am I willing to spend $800 to get a TV that would only be $300 in the US because it's a convenience? That's fine, but I'm paying for a convenience, not for the cost of the item. If I need to be frugal, if I want to know what the TV is actually available for, I can get it for $300, $310 as opposed to $300 in the US, and that's something that people really need to grok in order to understand why the cost of living for those of us who have been here and are doing the research. We often say things are just cheap. And so many people are like, but I'm paying so much for this, I'm paying so much for that. Often it's because they may be unaware, or they may be looking for some kind of convenience that they feel is worth it, and that's fine. But if you're really looking at what the price of something is, it's often much lower than people are perceiving. And there's a ton of people who haven't done this research, and they don't know people who've done this research, and so may be shocked to find that they can easily just go on Amazon and have it shipped. They have no idea, right? Until you've used Envio's Fast Track. I mean, I've lived here for years, and we've always said, yeah, you can send things in on Nicabox or whatever, but the cost of shipping is high. There's all these fees, and at the end of the day, is it worth it? No, we always fly up. Now I'm using Envio's Fast Track. I've got a relationship with them, not something that I get a kickback on. I can just WhatsApp them and say, I have a shipment, here it is, here's the tracking number, let me know, and it comes right to my house, and things are so easy. Now, having that relationship has made Amazon just as accessible to me as it was when I lived in the United States, and it's made Walmart online just as accessible, and all my little camera dealers, my used camera dealers, I can use just the same. I just got a Nikon D3400, which I'll be using in a couple hours for my nighttime photo shoots at Via for a concert, and I was able to get that at exactly the same price that I'm able to get it in the United States. So that's really awesome. That has solved a lot of things. So if people take enough time to understand this, and I've been here for years, right? I'm only now getting to a point where I understand all the moving parts, But hopefully by sharing them with you, I'm able to speed up your process. For some of you, it's knowing before you even come that these are things you can do. For others, it's that you've been here and you need to know that these are ways you can improve. And maybe some of you have more secrets that I don't have that you want to share with me. Get those comments and let me know, or send in a video with some information. That would be fantastic. And let us know more ways that we can get more of the same products for the same or lower price than in other parts of the world. And so that, after living here for 4 years and now having access to all this so regularly and so reliably, I'm able to evaluate the cost of living even more aggressively than I was before. Now, what we do know is if you're going to the grocery store, you're going to La Colonia or whatever, and you want to get American brands of food, Canadian brands of food, Swiss brands of food that are actually made abroad, those things have to be shipped over relatively quickly because they're perishable under normal circumstances. And so that means that those products are going to be quite a bit more expensive than they would be in their home countries. The reason is because those are local foods there. They're foreign foods here. It's specialty food. If you go to the United States and you ship in food from Nicaragua, same problem is going to happen, plus the tariff. That's additional, right? 19% beyond the normal cost of shipping to another country. So in the United States, products from Nicaragua are much more expensive than products from the United States are in Nicaragua. So we're still getting the better benefit of that relationship, but under normal circumstances, we simply have to understand that foreign food is expensive anywhere in the world. If you go to Europe and want to eat peanut butter, it's going to cost a lot of extra money because they don't make peanut butter there, not normally. And when they do, it's weird. So we expect that. So local food here, things that fill the same things in the ecosystem, right? You can't get Kellogg's cereal, you can't get Nestle's cereal and get local prices, but we have locally made cereals that are much cheaper than the cereals are in the United States. So if you're willing to consider the place in the ecosystem, the generic of a food item, we're consistently going to be more cost effective here. But when you're in the United States or when you're bringing in from the United States and getting US brands, it's going to be more expensive. And another example that Kevin had, and this is important for the food discussion, is apples. And this is, again, apples, yes, are quite expensive here. So if you're looking in a recreating an American lifestyle where you want to actually bring American food products or American grown products into Nicaragua, you're going to be paying a price premium. Again, not as much as Nicaraguan food going to the United States, but still quite a bit more. You have to take something perishable, get it on a ship, rush it here, and then sell it, and it's a unique item that not very many people are going to buy because it's a premium food and a lot of people are not used to it. Apples seem to Americans like the most common thing. They're the American example of fruit. So that they don't grow here in Nicaragua or anywhere nearby is relatively surprising to people, and that they have to be flown in from another part of the world and are a premium exotic fruit here really catches people by surprise. But in the same sense, getting papaya or guava in the United States, while completely doable, requires it being flown in from another part of the world and is considered a premium fruit that you're going to pay extra for. Normally, if you're getting guava or pineapple, or not pineapple, but guava or papaya products, you're getting it processed in this part of the world and shipped in a can or a bottle, like guava juice or papaya in a fruit salad that's been pre-prepared with the labor here. And then you're going to pay a premium, but it's being shipped on big ships and it's easily preserved. When you're really getting fresh fruit, you're probably going to pay a premium. Apples fall into this category. So if the question is, can you recreate the food items of the United States where you're shipping in lemons and apples and pears that must be grown in a different climate than we have in Nicaragua? Yeah, you're going to pay a premium. Kevin is correct. It is quite expensive. But if you look at the equivalent of apples in the local ecosystem, which is the guava replaces the apple in how people treat it and eat it and make pies and make jam and stuff out of it, then guavas are super, super cheap. So it's all perspective. And so if you just have to be aware, are you evaluating what it costs to recreate an American lifestyle? Yes, it's going to be much higher. Still cheaper than the US, but more expensive than you may anticipate. But if you're looking to have a new Nicaraguan lifestyle and you're willing to adapt, still eat fruit, just not the same fruit. Still eat bread, just not the same bread. Still eat cereal, just not the same cereal. Get a TV, maybe just a different TV. You're going to be able to do it much cheaper. But there's learning curves. You have to learn new brands. You have to learn new fruit. That's a big one. You have to change the way that you do things, but you're able to get a much lower cost of living. You're able to get a much more effective one. And we just have to be very aware of ourselves, of what it is we're doing. Are we creating a cost-effective life, or are we willing to spend more because there's things that we miss? I miss apples, but honestly, the ones they ship in aren't that good. They don't fill my space in my palate. I still want real fresh apples in the United States like we had when I was a child, but I can't get those much in the United States anyway. Apples have just gotten bad in the US, and I'm very, very sad about that. They were such a delicious food when I was a kid, and now they're just kind of mediocre. Why have we allowed fruit to go bad in the DNA of fruit? It's terrible. So thank you to Kevin for bringing up these important points. And this is an important topic because it does come up a lot, and it is confusing because the wording of things matters. Much like our Amazon video where the question was, does Amazon ship to Nicaragua? No. Oh, so I can't get Amazon in Nicaragua? Of course you can. I asked the wrong question. Understanding, is food expensive here? No. Is American food shipped in? Yes. Is the thing you want American food shipped in, or do you want it, like, what do you want to do? Are TVs sold here in country on the ground expensive? Yes. Do we have a way to get TVs that are inexpensive and competes or maybe beats the United States? Yes, we do. But maybe it's a lot more work. Maybe it's a different thing that we need to learn. But in being successful expats, I don't want to say good expats, it's not good or bad, but if we want to be successful as expats and get that experience where we're happy that we are saving money, that we're tackling challenges, that we're getting more value out of our experience as an expat, then understanding that there's some of these processes to learn and that we can, often with a lot more freedom and flexibility than we would have in other countries, we're able to put together processes that really benefit us more and hopefully benefit the country as well. So again, my apologies to Kevin for being overly harsh in the previous video that I did, but thanks for the discussion and this additional point that I think is very important to bring up. So I think that was a really good discussion, and sorry that the light is getting so low. I had to record this relatively late at night. I've gotten to a point where I'm a bit behind on the show. We did the live stream last night. It was very successful. I'm recording this on a Friday. I'm about to go to Via and record a concert. So if you haven't checked out my video channel, go check out Nicaragua here on YouTube. That'd be fantastic. Subscribe to that. We always like getting new people. If you want to see the music and culture of Nicaragua, it's a great channel for that. If anything you want to know, you want to contact me, you want to send in a video question, you want to get on our social media like Nicagram and Nicaloro, anything like that, go in the show notes. Everything you could possibly want is in there, including how to help Marcela, my producer, with her stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. We have a fundraiser on GoFundMe to help pay for taking care of her kids. She's a single mom, her housing, her transport and all that. Her healthcare is free. And my camera overheated. All of her healthcare is paid for because we have national healthcare here, but there's a lot of ancillary things having to do with having cancer, being a single mom, and needing a lot of support and transport and people to watch over her and so forth. So we have a GoFundMe to help raise funds for her. Anything you need, get down those show notes. Please stop in. Consider sending in a video question. We absolutely love putting you guys on the show. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe, share on social media, tell your friends about the show, and I will see all of you people who live in my little GoPro box from beautiful, sunny, very warm Nicaragua tomorrow.